So this is the KhoodeelaarTV television channel being streamed online, broadcast only on the internet. And this is timed at 10 past 11, that is 11:10 GMT on Saturday, the 25th of September, 2021. Now, the price of this weekend Financial Times, or the FT weekend, is in the shops £4.50. Now, that is the price of the combined tabloids, I think, in Fleet Street. And there is no mention that I can see of the vigil that was held across England, at least at least 10, if not more, separate vigils were held in memory of Sabina Nessa, who was murdered on last Friday, not yesterday, but a week yesterday. And the financial crimes is living up to our editing of this title. And there is absolutely nothing I can find about Sabina Nessa in the financial crimes. I do say that the price is £4.50 significantly, because it's completely barren, and the fact that this financial crimes is edited by a Lebanese-born woman, Rola Khalaf, is significant as well, because for whatever the motive, whatever the reasons, Kate Middleton is quoted as having expressed her own sorrow at the news that Sabina Nessa has been murdered. And the Times has got not one page, 2 pages, 10 to 11, the 2-page spread on the vigils that took place last night, Friday night. And this one is, of course, mainly the images, and the copy contains contents mainly from the vigil held in the London Borough of Lewisham, where Sabina Nessa lived and worked, and where she was murdered. So the 3 headings are: Detectives hunt second man in search for teacher's killer. The second one is talented and caring. She dreamt of bringing joy. And the sisters' tears at vigil as hundreds stand together in sorrow. So that's mainly from the vigil that took place where Sabina Nessa was murdered. So what we are saying about the financial crimes is that it doesn't matter who the Weekend FT editor is. It's a white man, but all these majority of these people who took part in the vigil are white women. And the recognition, we are the ones who pointed out the fact that the initial newspaper, the media coverage and reports of the murder of Sabina Nessa didn't even use the word murder. And as we pointed out, they refer to the concept of killer and her being killed. So this is something that was changed in the days after we pointed this out. And also the fact that we suggested that there was a narrative emerging of underplaying the murder, Sabina's murder, and that the murderer, if a murderer was caught and the trial took place, then there would be a lenient attitude toward the murderer. That's what we predicted. Now, this has been followed without any reference to what he said, but effectively as a sequence, if not an actual consequent response. The wider coverage in Fleet Street, and the wider coverage actually is being seen in the Murdoch dailies. The Murdoch newspaper, the two dailies, the Times, and of course this one, the Scum, and it has got almost as wide space given to the vigil yesterday. But the financial crimes has got absolutely not a single word. This is outrageous criminality on the part of the financial crimes. So we shall be looking at that continuously. We shall continue to look at the role of the financial crimes in perpetrating denial of justice. So this is the kind of latest online coverage on the search and Google. So there is one posted at 37 minutes ago, another an hour ago, and another 3 hours ago. The 3 hours ago one refers to the CNN, and the Evening Non-Standard Standard refers to Kate Middleton 3 hours ago, CNN 3 hours ago, Northern Echo 3 hours ago, Evening Standard 3 hours ago, and the Sun, of course, online. We're looking at online 3 hours ago. 4 hours ago is the breaking news on another, it's an independent Ireland. Well, so I have read all the main kind of titles, the results. No mention of the Financial Times. Financial Crimes costing £4.50. And the Financial Crimes is not as if it doesn't talk about issues other than outside the kind of ordinary life. It has got a long piece in the news about the Iranian regime allowing Iranian men and women to date and get married and introduce to one another. If they can do that, how is it that a murder of a school teacher or a woman in London, it's not like they didn't know. This vigil was very well advertised and well announced. So the fact that the Financial Crimes is blanking on this very serious issue is very significant about the role of the Financial Crimes. And it justifies the fact that we have described previously in previous editions, calling it the Financial Crimes because it is lying. And despite token kind of inclusions of pieces like the two pieces that directly attack the UK state breaking the law, the president of the Law Society of England and Wales, I. Stephanie Boyce, talked about the rule of law being broken by the UK state. And 3 days previously, on 30th of August 2021, a senior reporter on the Financial Times or Crimes, Chris Cook, wrote the piece which directly listed the open, brazen breaking of the law by the UK state employees. Despite that open identification of the government department, which is the Official Secrets Act is the one that Chris Cook focused on. Officials are going to great lengths. So let's find the actual wording of the heading. It's not possible to memorize the exact words in a heading. So this is the actual heading that Chris Cook put, or Chris Cook's notebook piece had put on it. I say had put on it to refer to the sub-editing process or stage where this might have been the product. UK officials are going to great lengths to keep their secret secret. And this piece also contains, well, he starts with the reference to a tribunal case in 2015. And this is a piece by another website which has stolen the item and distorted some of the words. Like, for example, this one, this is being accessed from a website, AFEGAMES, afegames.com. And they have lied. They have completely replaced the word castigated that Chris Cook's original piece had in it about the judge condemning the UK government officials. They have now replaced castigated with scrutinized. So here is another example of lying by the internet, by the media, in the context of perpetuating the lying agenda narrative of the regime fronted by Boris Johnson. And we shall come to that now. What this piece about the condemnation by a tribunal judge, Mr. Justice Charles, what this actually shows is that it is possible to find a member of the judiciary admitting the operation of lying by government departments, which is what Mr. Justice Charles's castigation of the Department of Health officials in the report, in that ruling published in 2015 was about. Which means that if a tribunal judge could condemn lying government department officials, then any other judge in a high court could do the same. And the fact that Mr. Justice Charles, as referred to by Chris Cook, did condemn the several officials of the Department of Health shows that the three judges so far who have persistently perpetuated and perpetrated the lies of the depraved department called DEFRA, they were not prevented legally or by precedent or the general pattern that could be found in the jurisprudence from admitting that the depraved DEFRA had been engaged in lying against baby angel Geronimo. And all three of them, Murray, Griffiths, and Stacey, the three so-called judges, could have condemned and should have condemned the depraved DEFRA. Because the fact and the extent and the implication and the impact of their lying for depraved DEFRA were far deeper and far more serious, far more dangerous, far more damaging, far more harmful to the target of DEFRA depravity than the lies perpetrated by the uncounted numbers of the employees in the Department for Health, whom the tribunal judge castigated and condemned. And the tribunal judge's castigation and condemnation were not limited to the part that Chris Cook actually focused on the whole ruling of the whole copy, the content of the ruling issued in the name of Mr. Justice Charles covered aspects that depraved DEFRA was found to be confecting lies and criminal conspiracies and criminal aggravated criminality, inventions, fabrications against the baby angel Geronimo. It's a health matter. The main material issues about baby angel Geronimo were about health. The signs, the evidence, the fact, the behavior. And DEFRA, the depraved DEFRA, didn't have the complete, even generic right to invent anything. And the science, the criteria, the material facts about the biological state of a particular living person or being warranted 1,000 times more thorough investigation of the actual evidence and the fact before the particular target of the conspiracy and the plot could be subjected to the harassing, criminally intended harassment tags and labels and false descriptions. All of these should have been systematically, scientifically, factually, honestly, transparently examined during the course of the proceedings before the three lying stooges that actually served the depraved perpetrators and criminals and fakers and fabricators operating under the banner or the cover of the depraved DEFRA. We don't know how many contacts baby Geronimo has had with how many kind of individuals with direct contacts with DEFRA, the depraved DEFRA. To what extent these individuals abused the good faith of baby angel Geronimo. Because these individuals, whoever they were, must have been operating, not all of them, quite a few of these individuals over the last 4 years must have been operating as conduits for depraved DEFRA. and as informers for the depraved DEFRA. So we don't know at this stage, at this time, the names of the individuals that have been able to secure access to the baby angel Geronimo. Regardless of their motives and regardless of their roles, regardless of their hidden agenda as agents of the depraved DEFRA, the baby angel Geronimo has been absolutely transparent and has been in absolutely finest state of health. So no matter what the agents and spies and informers who might have been among the people gaining access in the last 4 years, whatever their purpose, whatever their role, none of them could physically, materially, scientifically, factually, evidentially undo the perfect state of health that baby angel Geronimo has been in throughout the period. So that's a stunning rejection of all the lies and all the depravity and all the conspiracy and all the criminality confected directly and through agents and spies and informants by the criminals, by the depraved ones in the depraved DEFRA. Now we go into the news, even in the financial crimes today, about other aspects of the cabal that Johnson fronts. And the main heading on the page 1, the lead story, let's say the main heading, in the lead story says that Johnson is ready to ease visas for truck drivers. What it says in these words is put more directly in the Guardian on the front page today, which says that Johnson is staging Brexit U-turn. This is the Guardian, page 1 today, Saturday, the 25th of September 2021. It says ministers to agree visas for foreign lorry drivers in Brexit U-turn. And the Financial Crimes puts it dishonestly as Johnson ready to ease visas for truck drivers. It leaves out the crucial word foreign. And it leaves out, of course, the word Brexit. Now, this is the Guardian piece written by Rowena Mason and Rob Davies. Ministers are poised to agree an extraordinary post-Brexit U-turn. That is extraordinary post-Brexit U-turn. That is the main fact. So why is Johnson staging the U-turn that is very much against all the things that the congenital liar said about Brexit, taking back control and all the rest of it? It's giving up control as well. So if he can do that, on energy crisis, drivers crisis, then he could also agree over the last, let's say, 2 years, to baby angel Geronimo being allowed to exercise his health and his rights and be freed from the damaging lies inflicted on him at his expense. And all the evidence about Brexit, all the evidence about the claims about government delivering better service to the people in Britain, every single one, ordinarily, and even those ones that are examined without going into the implication of the Northern Ireland factor, all the promises and all the claims that both Boris Johnson and his other lying co-liars mouthed in the last 5 years, everything already has been exposed as having been harmful to the people of Little England. Quite apart from the fact that none of those promised goodies covered by the taking back control lie could be delivered. Physically impossible. Socially, absolutely damaging. Economically, devastating. These are not scaremongering by some mysteriously fanatical Remainers. These are real hard facts. Nothing to do with any ideology. So when the president of the Law Society of England and Wales accuses the Johnson-fronted cabal of breaking rule of law, the president of the Law Society is not representing litigants and ordinary people. The president of the Law Society is representing solicitors and the thousands and thousands and thousands of licensed law traders are significantly losing business directly as a result of the impact on various levels of having, quote, Brexit done, to use the congenital liar Boris Johnson's oft hyped statement, which was hyped for him by the Australian right-wing fanatic advising him on the propaganda. Now, although the Times of Murdoch has 2 pages given to the coverage of the vigil in memory of Sabina Nessa, the Times has got a piece column by the racist Matthew Paris. Now, Matthew Paris, anyone watching this from abroad, is one of the earliest self-outed gay politicians, because Paris was a member of parliament during the conservative regime fronted by Margaret Thatcher. And Matthew Paris is a racist who grew up in Rhodesia, Zimbabwe now. And in July 2005, 2 months after the 2005 general election, during which election the then sitting MP Blairite, Blair Babe Una King, was rejected by the electors in the Tower Hamlets constituency of Bethnal Green and Bow. Now, that was the election held in May 2005. And our campaign, the Khoodeelaar campaign, defending the same area from a big attack by the City of London interests and big business, exploiting the crass rail plot. Our campaign was against Crossrail. And we specifically identified the campaign as basically being defending the community in the East End of London generally, and the Brick Lane part of the East End of London in particular, because of the demography, because of the history of Brick Lane being connected over the last, well, at this time, but the last 70 years with the Bangladeshi demography, or Bangladeshi part of the demography in the East End of London. So in July, Matthew Paris behaved like a hysteric lunatic, saying that he, and at that time, 2005, the incumbent in the post of the corrupt post of the mayor at the expense of London was still Ken, whom we call lying still Livingstone. So this racist, self-confessed liar said to Livingstone in an open article, an open call to Livingstone, that Livingstone must drive Crossrail through Brick Lane. Now that was directly in opposition to the KhoodeelaarTV campaign, because we are the campaign that was actually opposing Crossrail plot to dig holes in big hole in Brick Lane, which would have destroyed the community. And here was Matthew Paris saying openly in July 2005 that Ken Livingstone must leave not stone unturned to drive Crossrail through Brick Lane. And he said, Matthew Paris said, as a punishment to the electors of the constituency of Bethnal Green and Bow, which contained Brick Lane, as a punishment to the voters of Brick Lane for daring to vote in George Galloway. Now, the community of voters didn't behave in that way. What they did was to reject Una King and let anybody else in. The idea was to let in anybody but Una King. That was the sequence. The purpose, the agenda, and the motive of the electors was to get Una King out of the post of being a member of parliament for that constituency. And that was the electors' choice and chosen reply to her challenge, defying the electors who were asking her to stop denying the rights of the Palestinian people. That was the main story, the main narrative. So in his corrupt, racist, contemptible, defiant call to then incumbent in the post of the mayor at the expense of London, Matthew Paris said that Crossrail should be driven through Brick Lane as a punishment for the electors daring to elect or cast their votes against Una King. So that was 16 years ago. 16 years ago, this criminal racist, apartheid raised Matthew Paris, attacked British democracy and people's democratic rights to vote the way they prefer or choose to. In the 16 years between 2005 and now, other media outlets in other papers have touted the image of Matthew Paris as a soft conservative, soft-spoken and soft-opinionated conservative. Now, anyone who actually studied and understood the impact and the implication of the Crossrail plot and the KhoodeelaR campaign and our reasoning for campaigning against the Crossrail hole, which we successfully have campaigned against because we stopped the hole. Anyone who studied all the facts, all the technical facts, all the evidence and all the arguments would have known that for Matthew Paris or anybody else to make the kind of call that Paris did make, aimed at Ken lying still Livingston, to ram Crossrail through Brick Lane, drive it through Brick Lane, would have understood that far from being a soft conservative or a moderate conservative or a wet conservative, Matthew Paris was, even in July 2005, being very much a right-wing conservative. Now you see, these 15 years, 16 years, he has been given the promotion that he is a liberal conservative, that is to the liberal is a small L. And we have never accepted that Matthew Paris was anything other than a very right-wing racist who might be also motivated by anti-Muslim motivations and hostilities. Now, Paris actually has got two, as far as we know, two homes. One is somewhere in the north of England or in the Midlands, and the other, his so-called ordinary London home, is in Tower Hamlets. And he actually lives in proximity with families and residents containing a number of young men that frequent the area, Limehouse. What does he make of that proximity? And what was the driving purpose for Matthew Paris choosing to have a home in Limehouse of all places? Does he know any people that belong to the same demography as the people he was attacking in his July 2005 attack piece against the voters of Bethnal Green and Bow? Does Paris know any of these people or people who are similar to the ones that he was attacking the rights, the electoral democratic rights of? Because today's piece in the Times on page 33, Matthew Paris ends that piece by saying what the country needs or what the conservatives want to become. And the country needs a right of center party. Now, why is the self-confessed liar, which is what Matthew Paris is, in his first big volume of memoir, he confesses to being a liar. Shall come to that in a minute for more extensive reference to the lying Matthew Paris. He is saying that the state in the UK is meddling in the affairs of people's lives too much. And he is saying that on a day when the Labour Party, which is politically murdered by Keir Starmer, begins its own right of center kind of push by the political murderer Keir Starmer. It is quite clear that Starmer has been the choice of right of center forces all along. the very forces that actually attacked the left of center Jeremy Corbyn. Now, there is a need for a clarifier, updater, disclaimer on what we think, what I think, and what I know to be the limitations of Jeremy Corbyn. First of all, the evidence shows that Jeremy Corbyn is a very confused individual. That Jeremy Corbyn is not a politically, intellectually fit person to lead any political party. And that the 5 years of his incumbents in that post as leader of the Labour Party have produced hundreds of incidents constituting a pattern based on evidence that Corbyn is not up to the job. That is regardless of the ideological bent, whether he's right of center, left of center, center, it doesn't matter. Corbyn intellectually does not have the material, the goods in him. So that is regardless of whether he's right or left or center. Having said that, as a clarifier, let's again resume the description of Corbyn as a left of center, despite the intellectual limitations. So when Corbyn was incumbent in the 5 years, all the attacks carried out against him by the Times, the Scum, both of those titles are, of course, owned and controlled by Rupert Murdoch. And the Daily Mail, which is not a Murdoch-controlled paper, but it has got the same ideological hatred against Corbyn and anyone who supports Corbyn. The Daily Express is included. And even though the Guardian has been stylistically kind of less hostile to Corbyn while he was incumbent, the agenda that the Guardian has carried and is still carrying is against the very small number of issues on which Corbyn actually differed from the right. So the Guardian and the rest of Fleet Street, the BBC, and even Private Lie, which pretends to have a kind of column or section against Fleet Street unreliability, dishonesty, inconsistency, and corruption. Even Private Lie joined with the Fleet Street vilifiers against Jeremy Corbyn. The same behavior that Private Lie and its so-called editor, Ian Pissoff, displayed in echoing the same pattern, the same agenda, the same narrative as carried by the editorial line of Fleet Street papers in supporting the agenda and the narrative of depraved DEFRA against baby angel Geronimo. Just like the crooked son of Nigel Lawson, the Dominic Lye's son, did by admitting that he was intellectually, morally, ethically completely bankrupt and was a cruel conveyor, a cruel courier of the cruelty agenda confected by the depraved criminals operating at DEFRA against the baby angel Geronimo's perfectly healthy personality and position and health. So Matthew Paris is not somebody who writes in constitutional, moral, ethical terms. He writes as a right of center, right wing kind of inciter of hatred. His style is a deceptive kind of tool. It doesn't kind of use loud words like the Daily Mail or the Scum or the Daily Express. But despite their style, in fact, because of the style, on the first kind of appearance, Matthew Paris doesn't come across as being an extremist, but is a chillingly cruel far-right operator and ideologue. The nearest other one that can be found operating through the right-wing racist cruelty-ridden media is Ian Dale. Ian is spelled I-A-I-N, who has got an apparent stylistic moderation which conceals his fascistic, anti-democratic, authoritarian agenda, personality, and approach. Regardless of their differences in terms of their sources of clientele, these right-wingers dominate the main media spaces and platforms. And we shall soon come to refer to Briloped Andrew Neil, another right-winger, right-wing kind of exploiter of the ignorance on the part of the majority of the Little Englanders who are not very objectively, transparently, who are not very intelligent. And they are not only not very intelligent, they are also very kind of limited in their knowledge of things that are happening. So these are the people that actually take their orders without the orders being dressed as orders. These are the people who take their orders, the cues, the prompts from the main collection of right-wing scripters and right-wing narrators and right-wing narrative formulators and authors. So when we talk about Keir Starmer being the political murderer of the Labour Party, we do that by imagining that there is no difference by any stretch of the logic and rationality that we say there is no difference between the conservatives of right or center right and the Labour Party, which as a party has been politically murdered. So what remains as the de facto name of the Labour Party is not at all the Labour Party, not at all fit to be mentioned. It's not fit to be mentioned as a party. That can deliver any kind of agenda against the conservative, against the right, against the imperialists, against the racists. And in the context of the 4 years of conspiracy and lying against baby angel Geronimo, there is nothing in the Starmer entourage, in the Starmer crew, that even recognizes the concept of justice. All right, so going back to the fact that the financial crimes hasn't got any even mention of Sabina Nessa. What does it say about the financial crimes? As I said, the financial crimes, even today, runs a big piece in the news. Let's locate the item. So on page 7 of the Financial Crimes Today, it talks about social trends. And it's the Islamic Republic. And it's a page, the only piece on that page 7, is about Iran giving matchmaking site the state's blessing. That is so what has the financial crimes against recognizing the life and the consequences of being murdered, the life of Sabina Nessa? Because so far in the coverage, like in the Times, there have been various sources being mentioned. Whatever the motive, Kate Middleton has expressed her sorrow and sympathy at the murder of Sabina Nessa. Whether Kate Middleton is jumping on the bandwagon, it doesn't matter. And even Sadiq Khan has been mentioned as one of those belatedly jumping on the bandwagon and mentioning Sabina Nessa and some other parties and sources. And together, counting together all of these various sources, in addition to the women who joined the vigil yesterday across the country, It doesn't matter how many cities or towns the vigils took place in. There were thousands of women, mainly women, who took part in genuine sympathy and solidarity, in showing respect for Sabina Nessa. How can the financial crimes deny all of those women while it is running this piece about Iran and matchmaking? Matchmaking is not anything to do with the finance or capitalism or whatever. So all these thousands of women who took part in the vigils held in the evening, yesterday evening, Friday, 24th of September 2021. These women had far more in their lives, in their behavior, in their choices, in their activities to do with finance. Whereas compared to those women, the women and participants in the matchmaking platforms in Iran don't have anything like that extent and detail of financial activities or economic activities in their profiles. So why did the financial crimes not even mention Sabina Nessa? This program, KhoodeelaarTV channel, generally is kind of introduced as its analytical platform identity, world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street. Anyone who is watching this for the first time needs to be told that this is a combined, consistent seminar, action seminar, campaigning seminar that is exclusive and original and absolutely, totally substantial, the like of which is not available anywhere in the world, in any language that we can access. As I said, we go into the motives, the range, the impact and the implication of the contents, the presence of the contents and the absence of the contents, as we have been doing, of the papers. And we said many times now that none of the so-called British universities has got anything remotely comparable to what we broadcast and have been broadcasting now for 14 months at least in this form. And here is the kind of admission by the financial crimes itself in today's FT weekend. There is a piece by John Gappa, and it's subheaded All Consuming. And Gappa seems to be among the staff writers on the financial crimes. And the heading to the piece by John Gappa gives an indication as to what this is about. University rankings are just an educated guess. Remember what we have said before, not necessarily in today's edition, but we have said that the universities are oversold. There are the British universities, and the quality and standards are oversold. That is, they're fabricated and they're not as highly commendable as they are promoted to be. Now, in addition to that, we have said on the facts and the evidence that British universities, every single one, carries out and has got in its operations a big chunk of corruption, criminality, falsehood fabrication, academic fabrication, fabrication of the evidence, and fabrication of the claims that it makes, each one. For example, there are 2 tiers or 3 tiers of universities, British universities. One is